Alright, so for the fourth but not final part, because I'm gonna be making a summary part, I feel, a part 5 with just everything collected, because the videos have been getting quite long. But for part 4, just some example fights with these skills, or one example fight. But this fight, just before, just to show what I meant with Ignis Rage, you can see that Xenolord is just not moving now. He tends to like focus a PAL box, or he will stand around next to a incapacitated PAL that is just laying around. Yeah, so like these skills that kind of depend on him moving into them, like Seed Mine and I think it's Seed Mine and Ignis Rage. There might be more that I'm forgetting, but some skills do better when the boss moves around a lot. They suffer a little bit with, mainly it's this Palpod strategy that makes them a little bit worse. If you're doing normal Xenolord, Ignis Rage and Seed Mine will do more damage than Ultra with the Palpods. As you can see hopefully in this example video, he spends a lot of time just standing still, staring at a PAL box, not moving into more explosions. And it's the same thing with Seed Mine from my tests here. So skills that aren't really affected by that tended to do a little bit better. But that is why I adjusted the DPS a little bit on Seed Mine and Ignis Rage from my one PAL test, because for the Ultra version it just doesn't really match up that well. So for the example raid I will be using, I just took the top skills, Lightning Streak, Curtain Splash, and Holy Burst. We have 2 Rescue Rios, and then we have me as the player flying around, because I found that most of the tests I was doing, they didn't really show a real case scenario unless I'm, participating in the fight, because there are some things like how much time they spend focusing the ads, so just letting the pals while they do their own thing doesn't really give you a real sense of how the skills and the pals would perform if you, the player, are helping and you're stealing a little bit of aggro from the boss, like every Holy Burst aimed at you is, makes sense, right? A Holy Burst that is not aimed at your pals, which is a little bit neat. So one thing you can do here, as I did there, is save that first freeze aggregate if you're not using freeze attacks on your pals to actually stop the Cosmic Meteor attack. So that's the benefit of not running Absolute Frost or Diamond Rain, I guess, or any other of those like Double Blizzard Spikes, that you can control that first freeze. And then you probably won't freeze him again for the rest of the fight, just because of that status resistance rate. Like, Libro has a status resistance rate of 1, you will freeze her over and over. Blasphemy had a status resistance of 10, you'll probably stun him like 3-4 times in a fight, not sure. Then we have Xenolord, it's like, you'll freeze him twice probably during a fight, something like that. It's a 100 status up resist, if I didn't mention that. So for the skills themselves, you will see that this Lightning Streak is hitting most of the time. I feel like it's hitting 5 times. So maybe I was a little bit conservative on the Lightning Streak DPS, because they miss sometimes from the PAL pods and stuff, but honestly I feel like I might have been a little bit too harsh on it, and it's a little bit better. But I feel like it has such a low cooldown that sort of evens out with it sort of overlapping with Holy Burst sometimes and just not getting used. So a little bit give and take there, like with most skills. So I have been reluctant to do these kind of spreadsheet DPS things before. So my Sakurdima test, like all the old skill fruit tests were live tests, just letting the PAL shoot the boss for 10 minutes and checking out how much it does and stuff like that. But now that doesn't really work out anymore. With these like live raid scenarios, as I mentioned, you gotta math it out a little bit, and finding these power things that you have, these like 50% reduced power for multi-hit attacks or 20% for flame funnel, stuff like that. It did make it actually possible to math this stuff out, but there are still some factors that you gotta get a feel for them. So what I did yesterday was I went in and I took pretty much the top probably the top 10 to 15 skills, and I just put them on my raid army and did a lot of testing. And this was the fastest kill, which, I mean, that's not entirely representative of all the skills, because, just doing one at a time, there are a lot of random factors, like how much Cosmic Meteors and how much Holy Burst they get one-shot by and stuff like that. But you get a general feel for some skills just being bad, and some skills like being good. It would be very noticeable if you used, like, Hydro Laser, Dark Laser, and Tri Lightning instead of Holy Burst, Lightning Streak. and Wall Splash and stuff like that. So Wall Splash seems very like good for this fight because it won't miss from the Palpods and stuff. They can use it from anywhere. It doesn't have a huge area of effect, which a factor that people have been thinking and considering for Xenolord is the ads. But I found that just using Frostallion, the Plasma Cannon, and like your own weapons, I feel like it's probably the best method. So you could throw in some Meteor Rain pals or something for the Xenovaders. It might work well, like my Sylvegas army did pretty well with that, but I honestly feel like just the player having a couple of Plasma Cannons or having this double Blizzard Spike and Blizzard Spike ready for the ad waves goes a long way for that. So then we have like the overall timings of all these. Like I did this build, I did some Ignis Range Beam Slicer, I did Blast Cannon, Seed Mine, like a very, I think a lot of different mixed skills, and the difference is minor, because as mentioned in one of my previous videos, Holy Burst is just such a big chunk of damage that even if you're comparing like, oh, Seed Mine is doing 10% more than whatever other skill, that's not 10% of the total damage, that's like 1% because Holy Burst is doing the majority. So the difference between these fights, this was the fastest fight. Then I had one with that was just a little bit slower with Lightning Streak and Seed Mine, just like 3 seconds slower. But even using some skills like I did the Diamond Rain and Absolute Frost, that was just 20 seconds difference. So honestly, it's not a big deal, but I find that this is probably gonna be more useful once we get more raid bosses added, and it does give you a general idea of the difference between like base pal DPS and party pal DPS, because the base pals have this, first you get the 20% increase instead of a 60% decrease, so you get like an increased cooldown time. That means that you get a lot of options for the loop compared to party pal. So you can actually use Lightning Streak and Seed Mine and have almost 100% uptime. So there's a little bit difference in what skills are good against the raid bosses. And then the raid bosses are generally pretty big, but this would definitely not be applied to Libro. She has a very funny hitbox. So yeah, overall a pretty quick kill with these skills. So Lightning Streak, Wall Splash, and Holy Burst for now seems to be, it's probably gonna be my go-to. I might switch a little bit with Seed Mine and try to abuse some positioning. I also do want to try to make Rock Burst work. I did just throw in a bunch of Xenolords with Rock Burst because they are dark. I was hoping the min-range thing would work out there, but Xenolord himself seems to move back quite a bit, so I mean the raid boss Xenolord, so it just didn't work out very well. There might be something there to consider. If you can find like maybe Frostallion not charging in with Crystal Wing for a hit of Rock Burst, but honestly it didn't seem super good against Xenolord. So moving on to part 5, I will try to summarize all these DPS tests. This was the example build. Thanks for watching.